Welcome to another video in the new series, Dave's FAVE500. People have responded to the first video I did and said this is a massive undertaking, doing 500 albums, kind of making the case for 500 albums, and then doing them 5 albums at a time. That it's 100 videos. So we'll see how we get. But anyway, it's kind of, we've all got different tastes, and the whole idea of this series is basically to kind of suggest to people these are albums that are worthy of anyone's time if their tastes kind of move in that sort of direction. Because as I said in the first video, these 500 albums that I'm eventually going to be talking about here are going to be all over the map when it comes to the genres, no question. And I commented. I was kind of participating from outside in a live stream last night, and there was an extended discussion on Oasis. It must have gone on for nearly half an hour, and it's clearly the group involved in that particular live stream were really into like Britpop, 90s kind of indie style music, which is fine, but it was kind of it just made me realize that we've all got different tastes. I mean, I was well in for Oasis back in the day, buying bootlegs and all sorts, but like a lot of artists and bands, they kind of peaked and then they tailed off, and they're only really back in the news because they're doing this reunion tour that's kicking off shortly. Anyway, I'm not going to that of course, but and indie's not my bag, even though I've got some indie rock albums in the collection. But hey ho. But anyway, today I'm going to do a further 5 albums that I think people should think about listening to. And the first one is a bit of a, is it a cheat? It's a compilation, but it's absolutely fantastic compilation. I bought this compilation when this artist, let's tell you what it is. It is Looking Back by Stevie Wonder. Now, I grew up listening to the chart rundowns on Radio 1, and we used to have a reel-to-reel tape recorder in the bedroom that I shared with my brother, or one of my brothers, and we used to record the chart rundowns, and I grew up listening to Superstition. But of course, Superstition came out in 72, I think it was. That was, at a time that I was discovering rock and discovering progressive rock. So even though I loved Superstition, I wasn't going to use my hard-earned money that I'd earned from delivering newspapers in the community on a kind of a soul album when I was really interested in the latest Genesis album. But anyway, and I didn't get to those those albums, Music of My Mind, Talking Book, Inner Visions, Songs in the Key of Life. I didn't get to them until later on. But I did pick this compilation up in, I think it was 1977. And it's part of a Motown series of compilations that covered the likes of, Diana Ross and Marvin Gaye and Temptations and so on. And this is a 3-album set, and it covers the Stevie Wonder period from 1963 to 1971. And it is absolutely fantastic. It's a triple album, and it's got non-stop hits. Now, if you like Stevie Wonder and those 60s albums, you'll know that a lot of them ran for maybe 25-30 minutes, and none of them really stood out until he really got a grip on his career as an independent composer and an artist, around 1970 onwards. This is kind of him as like a soul artist, part of the machine, as it were. But let's just tell you what's on this. So I'll give you an idea of what the inner looks like. Let's see if this works. There's the big picture of Stevie. And what have we got on here? Right, Fingertips. Fingertips Part 2. Castles in the Sand. Uptight, Everything's Alright. Blowing in the Wind, which is great. A Place in the Sun. Sylvia. Until You Come Back to Me, That's What I'm Gonna Do. I Was Made to Love Her. For Once in My Life. My Cherie Amour. If I Ruled the World. Yes to Me, Yes to You, Yesterday. Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Heaven Help Us All. Yeah, If You Really Love Me. But anyway, yeah, this, when I consider all the albums I've got of Stevie Wonder, whenever I really want to go for an album that I think this is the one that is going to get kind of be most compelling for me, it's not one of those classic early to mid 1970s albums. It's this compilation from basically the 60s up until 71. So that is heartily recommended. I'm sure you can pick this up at record fairs for a £5. This one's a cutout. I probably picked this up for about £3 back in the day, but it's brilliant. Stevie Wonder and Looking Back. The second album, or number 7, number 7 in Dave's FAVE500, is Jackson Browne and Lives in the Balance. Now, this is this his first? I think it's in 1986, I think it is. Let me just tell you, let me just confirm. Yeah, 1986. This is when he's really getting political. And the title track is tremendous. It's got these panpipes on it, but it's a great anti-war song or anti-politician song. Absolutely brilliant. But it's a good album. Like a lot of his 80s stuff, it's got that 80s sheen in terms of the musical instrumentation. But he's still just brilliant lyricist. What we got here that's really good, I mean, Candy, for example, that closes side 1, is pretty pedestrian, but For America is great. In the Shape of a Heart is wonderful. Till I Go Down, Black and White, great album, absolutely great album. I did a separate video on this, on the particular title track, and if I can find it, I'll put a little clip in here. But I would definitely recommend Lives in the Balance by Jackson Browne. Lives in the Balance. Now, this one was released in 1986, and by this time, his sound had gone from, in early beginnings, a kind of very muddy type sound into something that was very crystal clear and very, very dynamic as well. So really punchy rhythm section, nice guitar, very clear vocals right in the center between the speakers. So this guy is, as I say, popular music without being pop. But this particular album is the one I keep going back to. Now, what would attract the casual listener to this one? Well, For America, In the Shape of a Heart is a really nice love song. Till I Go Down, Black and White. But there's one track on this album that must be heard, and it's the title track, Lives in the Balance. And why is this relevant? Well, this is Jackson Browne at his political best. And I'm gonna talk through the lyrics a little bit here. So here we've got it, Lives in the Balance, second track on side 2. One thing that he's also known for is that he is a bit like Paul Simon. He kind of takes influences from other parts of the world, but particularly Latin and South America, and introduces instrumentation from there into what is traditionally known as a kind of Californian sound. And on this one, Lives in the Balance, he's got at least one person who's playing the panpipes. You know, I say it's the panpipes, but it's kind of, I'm looking at some of these instrumentation here. Drums, bass, synthesizers, nylon string guitar, charango and tipple, zampona, and then guitar, acoustic guitar, harmony vocals. Anyway, it's got this sound that it sounds like panpipes. Maybe it's not panpipes. Maybe it's one of these other things. But anyway, why is it relevant? Well, lives in the balance. Let me just read to give you a flavour of what he's singing about here. And it opens the first verse. I've been waiting for something to happen for a week or a month or a year. With the blood in the ink of the headlines and the sound of the crowd in my ear. You might ask what it takes to remember when you know that you've seen it before, where a government lies to a people and a country is drifting to war. So he's making allusions there to American intervention in Latin America. Since then, of course, we can talk about beyond. He's talking about the noise of the crowd, where the press is whipping up a frenzy and support to whatever the government action is being implemented. So it's kind of an anti-war song, as you can already pick up. And there's and he goes on, and there's a shadow on the faces of the men who send the guns to the wars that are fought in places where their business interests runs. So their business interest runs. On the radio, talk shows, and the TV, you hear one thing again and again: how the USA stands for freedom, and we come to the aid of a friend. But who are the ones that we call our friends? These governments killing their own? ? Or the people who finally can't take anymore and they pick up a gun and a brick and a stone. And there's the chorus: there are lives in the balance, there are people under fire, there are children at the cannons, and there is blood on the wire. And he goes on: there's a shadow on the faces of the men who fan the flames of the wars that are fought in places where we can't even say the names. They sell us the present. Well, I'll come back to that. So right now, as I'm recording this video, we've got the Russian offensive invasion of Ukraine. And, we've just lived through 2 years of a pandemic where we had wall-to-wall media coverage of the pandemic. And then within the space of about a couple of weeks, it just flipped. And now all we can hear about here is Ukraine and how we must stand with the Ukrainian people against the evil tyrant from Russia, Putin. And that there's lots of talk in the air around Western intervention directly into the war. And, we all know that the implications of that in terms of potential for World War III. But anyway, this is 1986, so it's prior to the American interventions around the globe, and it's obviously prior to what we're experiencing today, or what people are experiencing in Ukraine today. But it says it's an interesting commentary on the media, and an interesting commentary on how the politicians sell the wars. So he goes on: they sell us the president the same way they sell us our clothes and our cars. They sell us everything from youth to religion, the same time they sell us our wars. I want to know who the men in the shadows are. I want to hear somebody asking them why. They can be counted on to tell us who our enemies are, but they're never the ones to fight or to die. And there are lives in the balance, there are people under fire, there are children at the cannons, and there's blood on the wire. So yeah, very, very political. Just as relevant today as ever. But why should you listen to Jackson Browne? Well, I think he's a fantastic songwriter. He's got a brilliant back catalogue. He was brilliant in the 70s, and his writings on relationships and on politics, for the most part, are there's definitely nowhere that he's not going in the direction of virtue signaling most of the time. There's one or two things that he's written about in recent years you think that's just a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too obvious, but really interesting with his talking or singing about the military industrial complex and politics and American involvement in wars around the globe. Brilliant then, still absolutely relevant today. So yeah, if you like kind of melodic, great songwriting, fantastic lyrics, Never boring, certainly, you know, interesting. Jackson Browne is definitely the one to go for. I wouldn't start with this album, but I'm recommending this album today because I think that one track is as relevant today as it's ever been. So thanks for watching. So Lives in the Balance, Jackson Browne. Now, if you can't stomach Jackson Browne's politics or his writing about politics, then his relationship album, the one that I think is possibly the best album he ever made, is, I think it's 76, and that is The Pretender. So if you're interested in Jackson Browne, you'll know about this one if you know Jackson Browne. But if you don't know him, Lives on the Balance is great, but this is kind of his classic, and it is undoubtedly a classic. One of the greatest American albums of all time as far as I'm concerned. Right, number 8 in Dave's Fave 500, changing the musical style completely, is the last studio album, although I don't think we were to know it at the time, by King Crimson, and this is The Power to Believe. Now, I think this just came out on CD, and this was a vinyl issue that came out some years later. This is 2003? Sometime around then. But this is really, really interesting. So if you followed King Crimson, you'll know that they were the pioneers of progressive rock with their debut album In the Court of the Crimson King. But if you followed them through their career, they're a very, very eclectic musical palette. Almost every album sounded really different to the one before. And I think they broke up, and Robert Fripp, the guitarist and main writer, kind of broke up the band, and I think in 74. Was it after? I think after the Red album, around that period anyway. And then he reformed the band with Tony Levin and Adrian Belew, Levin on bass and stick, and Adrian Belew on vocals and guitar. And that lasted for 3 albums, and then eventually came back again in the 90s. With another incarnation, something with 2 drummers and so on, and then this album was released. Now, this album is, when you consider most of the albums of the 1990s from King Crimson, a lot of them were very aggressive sounding, particularly thrack. But this is far more varied. Lots of quiet moments on this album as well, and the track, The Power to Believe, I think has 4 parts here. So this album works best if you listen to it in one sitting, because a lot of the pieces are kind of like interludes and like a return to the musical theme of the earlier track. But it's also got some great aggressive stuff on here as well, like Level 5. Which demonstrates how tight this band were. Musically, these guys are virtuosos, and it really shows. Now, after this, they got back on the road, and I saw them at Birmingham Symphony Hall sometime in the early 2000s, and they were absolutely fantastic. 3 drummers, in fact, 3 drum kits at the front of the stage. But absolutely brilliant, and I love this album. It's kind of a late period classic. It kind of reminds me, if you haven't got that, but you're interested in King Crimson, one of the things that I definitely recommend is the Elements. When they did these tours from about 2015, did I say early 2000s? Maybe it was about 2015 when I saw them. But they released these 2 CD sets called the Elements. And what they did is, from throughout their career, they had extracts or isolated keyboards or guitar, and kind of in a bit of a remix, almost like a great big medley. But they released about 7 or 8 of these. I've got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I think 8, including this one. And these are really interesting. So you get the great Mellotron, soaked early stuff on here, but you also get the aggressive stuff from the 80s and then the 90s. So really good. They're definitely worth picking up if you're a King Crimson fan. Right, 2 more. for this video, and I'm going to recommend Stan Ridgway's The Big Heat. Now, Stan Ridgway was the singer and possibly the main songwriter for Wall of Voodoo. I didn't really know Wall of Voodoo other than Mexican Radio, which was kind of a hit that was played on John Peel back in the early 80s, and I think. But around about 1986, is it 86? Yeah, bang on, 86 again. Stan Ridgway released his first solo album, The Big Heat. Now, he's got this kind of wry delivery. It's kind of like he's kind of a slightly aloof. He's got this very distinctive voice. It's kind of keyboard based, a lot of synthesizer. The rhythms are kind of something that's quite fast. He's got this harmonica sound that sounds like it's recorded way down the corridor, and it's got this real cinematic quality. And it's just today I was out in the car, and on random play on the car stereo, there was a piece from Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, which was composed by Bernard Herrmann, and it's got this like film noir sound, this cinematic quality that's all over this album, and I absolutely love it. And of course, the reason why this one was a big breakthrough is the final track called Camouflage that made it onto Top of the Pops in the UK. This kind of story about this GI in the jungle, saved by the ghost of another soldier, called Camouflage. But it's got like this marching beat, and it's just one of the best pop songs ever. But amazing, and I absolutely love this album. Heartily recommend. If you think you like that sort of stuff, just keep buying, getting access to Stan Ridgway albums, because he just went from strength to strength. Although this, I have to say, is a real standout. The last album today is going to be Depeche Mode, and that is Ultra. Now, this is way past their synthy pop era. The early Dave Gahan vocals, forget Vince Clarke for a second, but this is really dark, and it's got this really gritty industrial sound to it. Gahan's vocals are really gritty. Forgive me if I've used that word twice, but it's like I think he was going through massive drug problems at the time, and they struggled to get him into the studio. But there is something really grown up about this album, and it's got this, I say, this industrial sound. It's got this grindy kind of rhythm that is very different from those early pop years. It opens with Barrel of a Gun, which I remember buying on CD single back in the day. But just some fantastic tracks on here. Useless, It's No Good was a single, I think, as well. Sister of Night is a quiet number. But yeah, absolutely fantastic album, and a bit like, it reminds me of The Cure's Pornography, in that it's had a real dark and intense feel in the music, and a different band, of course, but they're kind of the same atmosphere is created on this album, Ultra. So yeah, this period of Depeche Mode, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So, Dave's FAVE500 marches on for now. See you later.